Hi, everybody. So, although this says features, benefits, and feelings, and I'll spend a good amount of time on that, I think that the idea of the subject overall is maybe some thoughts on training, some training techniques. So I'm going to throw out maybe a couple of random things that I've recently found to be really important to train in the studio. Then I'm going to talk quickly about your 5 steps, which you saw as your all-star release, and give you some guidance as to how to use those. And then I'll put the focus on the feature, benefits, and feelings, okay? So something that I trained recently that I found very, very beneficial was helping the teachers to understand the difference between a student who has an interest and a student who has a sincere desire. Okay? And I'm looking at this from the perspective of a sample lesson. Now, we know the difference, right? We know when they come in and they say, I have a wedding, I've been thinking about it for a long time, I watched Dancing with the Stars. Those would be all indications to me that there's a desire to learn to dance, okay? Then, of course, the ones who say, well, I don't know, I was just thinking about it, it's just something I wanted to try. It's experimental. I mean, all of those things would say that this is somebody who simply has interest, okay? And what we did in one of our studios is we put that into the bridge that the counselor gives to the teacher before the teacher takes them on the floor for the sample lesson. And that's pretty huge because now the teacher doesn't, well, first off, I don't think the teachers really recognize in many cases the difference between interest and true desire. So when the counselor says, Jamie, this is John. John is very interested in checking out the studio. He's talked about it with his wife a little bit here and there, blah, blah, blah. Versus, Mary, this is John. And John has a desire to learn tango because he has an upcoming whatever it might be. So it was the simple use of those 2 words inside the bridge that gave the teacher the first indication of, am I going to start to talk about the benefits with this person because the desire is there? Or do I need to create, find, figure out a desire to make sure that we get a sale? Make sense? Okay, I'll move on from that if nobody has questions. Okay, the second thing I did was I talked to the teachers about how do you turn an interest into a desire? And the answer is very, very simple. When you attach an emotion, whether it's positive or negative, to the interest or to the action, which would be the sample lesson itself, that is a simple key to creating desire. And I have a big beef about that. I think we say to our teachers all the time, go out there, create desire. We send them out to do that without giving them a nuts and bolts description of how to do that. Yes, it is attaching either a negative or a positive emotion to the action or to the interest that they have. So-and-so has been kind of interested in learning to dance, and you're going through the motions of the sample lessons itself, okay? If you give your teacher a list of, let's say, 10 or 11 positive emotions, and some of the more popular ones would be joy, excitement, satisfaction, which is very different than what we see on our benefit sheet, right? It gives the teacher a fresh perspective. It gives them fresh things, fresh adjectives to speak about. And when they tie that with the physical action of what the student is doing, that let's say the action of learning the box step would actually create long-term satisfaction, maybe in their personal life, because they'd be able to meet somebody. Do you see that? So it's an either positive or negative emotion attached to what they're doing. And so what I want to do as a trainer is I want to take my sample lesson itself and I want to break it down into every component. The greeting, the bridge to teacher, the body of the lesson, the bridge back, whatever your components are. And I want to sit with my teachers with that list of 10 or 11 positive emotions, and of course the 5 or 10 negative ones. And I want to say to them, okay, now how can we place this into every aspect? How do we put it into the pre-chat? How do we put it into the bridge? How do we put it into the body? And I think when teachers are operating like that, I mean, ultimately what happens is they're speaking the student's language. They're really doing a lot of feature benefit feeling, but they're looking at it from a different perspective. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions about that? If you don't, I'll move on. There's other things I want to give you. We good? Okay, awesome. Training in general, just for a quick minute. I might have to find this. I just want to say, when we're talking about training our teachers, what I've discovered is that if we give them a reason to learn whatever it is you want them to learn, and it's a factual reason, whether it's based off of your numbers are bad or you had certain number of students that you lost, that's one of the keys to getting them to actually listen and do, okay? The other thing is explaining to them why they're going to benefit, how they're going to benefit personally, the teacher, so they're personally motivated to listen to your training and actually do it. This is how you avoid them going to sleep, right? And that you can prove it. To me, proving is really, really important. It's not important to me, it became important to me as a trainer, okay, which is gonna lead me to beyond the sample lesson front department. So yesterday I mentioned the Maslow's theory of human motivation. So do you know how long that's been around? 1943. A long, long time, 1943, there you go, thank you, Jill. It is a proven fact, or the most proven fact we have, of how human beings are motivated. And if you simply Google that and pull up that pyramid, okay, what you'll see is beyond the first level, which is like the food, water, that kind of stuff, every single level is satisfied inside of the studio, okay? For instance, safety, security is the one above the food and the water thing, okay? Can you provide that for your teachers? You can provide safety, security of employment, security in their position, in their place in the studio. Does that make sense? And then when you can prove it to them or show them how they get that in the studio, it's very easy to show them how the student gets that. Does that make sense? So if you can find some kind of a theory or a written document that proves what you want to train, you'll find your teachers will be much, much more engaged in whatever it is you're trying to do, okay? I had a couple more notes on that, but I have to say I can't find them, so I'm gonna go on, and if I find them, I'll get to the end, do them in the end. So from there, let's talk about the 5 steps of a sale. A lot of you have heard this already if you read that initial All-Star release. The first one was connect. The second one was asking questions. The third one is speaking their language. The fourth one is overcoming. Oh, I found it. The fourth one is overcoming whatever objections or concerns they might have. And your last one in the All-Star release is referred to as finishing, which in this room is closing, okay? So if we connect with somebody, we can ask them intense questions if that's what we want to do. Once we ask them questions, we have a thorough understanding of them, their life, how they think, whatever it might be. And we take what we discovered and we use that as the language to explain all of the things we do, the language to explain the benefits that they'll gain. You use that same language to overcome the objections, and you use the same language to close. And I love this system because no matter what is going down in your studio, you can figure out which of those areas is creating the weakness. Does that make sense? Okay, now, I think the point of today was to zero that in on the features, the benefits, and the feelings aspect. How many of you are training that inside of your studio? Okay, and how many of you feel really good training it? Some, okay. All right, well, then I guess that means we'll take it from the beginning on that. So I'm gonna tell you exactly how I would train this particular subject, okay? I always tell them the 5 steps, and I always explain that this is the speak their language step, okay? I explain the Maslow's thing to them so they understand how we motivate human beings, and they see that every single one of those stages exist in the studio. And because I found my notes, I'm gonna say that quickly. The second level is sense of security. and general well-being. I think we very much provide that in our studio, not only for our staff, but we provide that for our students. The third level, social belonging. The third thing that human beings are most motivated by are belonging, belongingness it's defined as, friendship, intimacy, and family. We provide that for our staff, 100%. We also provide it for our students. And you can challenge them on that, right? Right? Do you think you have to ask them, do you see how we can provide this? Do you disagree with this? That's when I said earlier that you have to be able to prove what you're trying to get them to do. And proving it is also a conversation about it. Am I wrong? You know, if I'm wrong, I want you to tell me. If I don't have this, if I'm looking at it differently and you're seeing it differently, I need you to tell me that. Because as soon as they say, oh no, I get it, we do provide that, then you know that they're on board. If they're still challenging you, then they're not trainable, right? They don't believe that what you're saying is truth in that moment. The fourth thing, being accepted and valued by others. Self-esteem. Again, we do that both with the teachers and with the students. And the fifth one is the higher level of achievement. And that's when your staff gets to grow. That's when your students get to go to competitions, showcases, things of that nature. So explain that to your staff, first and foremost. The next thing I think that we need to explain to our staff or get them to understand is that people have different stages in their lives. And if I did one of your TOCs this year, we talked about this. The way a young couple feels when they come in the studio, what that young couple is experiencing in their life, and what that young couple is trying to do inside of their relationship is significantly different than a newly married couple, a couple who's been married 4 or 5 years, a couple who then adds kids to the mix, right? Then what happens? The kids leave. That creates a whole nother stage of life. And just when you think you got it going on and the kids are gone and you're going to be able to live this life, you're old. Okay, in a sense. I mean, you can look at it like that. It's not all negative, but you can look at it like that. But you know, our staff doesn't think like that. They see them, and they think about them. And then they'll challenge me in a meeting and say, well, I can't relate to people like that. Well, you know, we all watch television. It's mostly based on reality shows right now. That's human nature, human behavior, human problems. We all have parents, although I will say I did one training session where this kid challenged me and there weren't parents and all of those things, and that was a little bit tricky, so try and know before you go there. But they have neighbors, they have aunts, they have uncles, they know people who've experienced divorce and loss and all of those things. So if you can help your teachers to understand that as we go through life, there are a lot of things that we will experience, not all negative, but things that they should grasp. Does that make sense? Okay, do you need any information on the different stages of life? No? We're good on that? Awesome. That's the theory of human motivation. Yeah, you can Google that and it'll give you a pyramid. We had theory of human motivation, making sure your staff understands that. Then we had understanding people and the major stages people go through. I'm going to say them really quickly again. Young and dating, engaged, getting married. Right after the wedding, what happens? The wedding. Right after the wedding, there's oftentimes a bit of a letdown, which creates different emotions, different needs in our lives. Okay, then we get that smoothed out and we bring in kids. What do kids create? Stress, lack of time, lack of sex. Simple facts. I think if we tell our teachers that, do they know that? At the age of 20, 25, do they know that? They don't have any idea. They don't. So I think telling them, okay? Not in Daisy's case though, right? Just everybody else. Okay, so, and then they have the stress of the kids and having to get through that, right? And then the kids leave. And now we have the whole empty nest thing. I've got this man across from me. I didn't really have to pay attention to him. There was a lot of chaos in the house. Now all I can think about is the fact that he snores, drools, and leaves his socks everywhere. Okay? Empty nest syndrome. How do I fill my time? What do I do with myself? How do I become valid again in the world? Because the validity was based on the kids, the bringing up of the kids, things of that nature. Then what happens with old age? You know, the looks become a problem. The physicality becomes a problem. Aches, pains, medical. And if you look at every single stage, and there's, I'm sure, many, many more, and you take your benefit sheet and you teach your teachers that whatever that generic benefit was, let's use exercise, okay? How do you speak about exercise to a 20-year-old? How do you speak about exercise to the wedding couple, okay? The woman who's just had a couple kids and she doesn't look the way she used to look, and so on and so forth. So you're helping them to understand how each benefit twists into each stage that a person experiences. Does that make sense? Because if they have an understanding and an empathy and a compassion because they've had someone take the time to explain all of these things, the student walks in and they already, I already know. I think I might know. Well, if they think they know, then they have a beginning point of asking questions. It's a bit of profiling, right? Okay? I'm not a big fan of judging in any way, shape, or form, but I do find that if the teachers understand the stages, as the person comes in the studio, they're connecting those two things. Okay? Now, what do they have to do? They have to just find out if their thought or what they've been trained is true. And oftentimes teachers will say, well, what if I'm guessing the wrong thing? Fantastic. The student will say no to you. And now you're not wasting time anymore on a wrong benefit. The student said, no, that's not something I'm interested in. Okay, switch gears and go to whatever the next benefit is you think would be valid and relevant for that person. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Now, next step. 3 columns. 3 columns. The column on your left needs to be a list of features. Okay, what are the list of features? It's anything and everything you have in your studio. It's simply a thing. It's what something is. And my favorite ones that I would train on most frequently would be group, party, exchange lesson, a program, an event, and I'm going to add one more for you, and that's frequency. For me, in my system, those are probably the 6 things we're trying to create the most frequently, you know, getting them done. So that is simply what something is, and you want them to be able to describe it in the simplest, easy way. That's not the area that they go on and on and on in, okay? A group class, it's you, 4 or 5 other people, you all learn the same thing at the same time. A party, it's practicing for a live event. It's where you make your mistakes so you don't make them when you go out. Okay, very, very basic on the feature. What's the benefit? The benefit is what the feature does. So basically, everything that's on our benefit sheet could be used in that middle section, okay? So if somebody went to a group, what would be a benefit of a group? Just throw one out. Pardon? Okay, they'd meet people. Benefit of an exchange lesson? Pardon? Okay, different approach. Benefit of frequency? Okay, we're all very, very good at these 2 things. Where I find our staff fall short is in describing the feeling or the result. So I like to think of it in three different ways. They can describe a feeling. They can describe a solution to a problem or to, you know, something that they've been experiencing. Or we can describe an experience they've not yet had. Okay? So it's either a feeling, a solution, or an experience? So we build on that when I train it. If I say to the teacher, okay, if your student goes to a group class, and I'll go to teacher number 1, if your student goes to a group class, what is a benefit that they might get? Teacher says confidence. Then I'll look at the next teacher and say, okay, if they went to the group and they gained confidence, what's something they could feel on a dance floor? Okay? And we go around the room. As Daisy said, you practice the same things over and over and over again, and you find creative ways to do it. The message doesn't change. I've had a lot of people say to me, you have an interesting way of saying the same stuff in different ways. Now, is that a compliment or not? I'm not sure. But, the message can't change. If you believe the message, if you live the message, then the message doesn't change. And I've never found a reason to reinvent what we do. The old school stuff that was done, 30 years ago when I was a brand new staff member. That's still the stuff that, in my opinion, is very, very relevant today. So don't be shy about doing the same things over and over and over again. Okay? So we have to do the exercise, right? If you do the exercise, that'll tell me if you have a question. So you want to look at your partner, and you're going to present a feature, you're going to add a benefit to it, and then you're going to describe either a feeling, a solution, or an experience. Can you do that for me real quick? Okay, did everybody get that? I can't tell if you're chatting or mocking. Okay, let's do one more, and let's do this more through an assignment, and then if you have questions, I'll answer them. Let's talk about the presentation of a program, because this should follow this exact line, okay? What is it? This is the program I've planned for you, okay? The reason I've planned it is because we've talked about your need to gain confidence, opportunities to go out socially, okay? And generally speaking, an outlet, something to do. The end result of the program is that you're going to be able to, and I'm either going to describe a series of feelings that they would have in an experience, okay? Let's say they'd had some issues or some negative things. Then in that case, I'm going to present it through a solution to the negative things that they were experiencing. Does that make sense? And on a side note, more people are motivated by what they don't want to have happen than what they do want to have happen. And your meter there, the more logical they are, the more the negative will work for them. Clearly, the more optimistic, the more positive is going to work for them, okay? There's something about that melancholy personality. They're very suspicious people. And so when you present this pie in the sky, you're going to be able to do all of these crazy, amazing things, they're going to look at you like this, and then they're going to be the think over or the no sale. Because if it's not logical for them, it's not going to work. Does that make sense? So you're going to add one last piece onto that. If they're logical people, then you have to tell them how. So you actually go feature, benefit, feeling, logic. Okay? So if I had that person, this is the program I've prepared for you. I think it's going to give you a lot of self-confidence, and it's going to give you avenues and opportunities to go out and socialize. And one of the things you've shared with me is that you haven't had that experience. You spend a lot of time at home, and you're not overly excited about that. I'm presenting the opposite to you. I'm presenting the answer to what you've experienced. And how that's going to happen is each and every single lesson is going to be pre-planned. I'm going to visit your lesson every 6 sessions to make sure that your teacher is on track and following what you and I set up. And if at any point in time I see or you feel that this promise isn't being delivered, we'll stop. Okay? Now, what did that do? That gave them some of the highs, some of the emotion, right? Negative. But then it logically explained how we would keep track or plan the program. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions? Okay, so we're going to do the assignment together again, where you will present a program. Oh, by the way, you always make sure your teachers quote at the end of that. Okay? So when I said, and this is how it's going to happen, and by the way, I only need 50 units and I'd like you to enroll today. Can we do that? It is very important that you get your teachers to say that last sentence. If they don't say the last sentence, the closer is going to get stuck with that, and the closer doesn't have the same amount of power, in my opinion, as the teacher does. And I know in the last, handful of years, our business seems to have gotten away from the sale aspect. And I don't think that we should do that. I think sales is a very honest thing. The world operates on it, and the fact that we would hide from that word because of our teachers, that's kind of insane for me. So I think for me, I make it very, very clear. Your job is to recommend a program if it is the right thing for them. If it's not, they have no business making the recommendation. Okay? So feature, we're going to do feature to benefit, feature to benefit to feeling, but it's going to be presentation of a program. You're going to throw out a couple of strong benefits, and then you're going to give them a solution, an experience, or a feeling. In all honesty, if you spent 10 minutes of super focus on your staff member and you gave them ingredients, okay? What are the ingredients? You give them a few things about the feature, a few things about the benefit, a few things about the feeling. You don't micromanage them and tell them exactly what to say. You give them ingredients to choose from, okay? Because if it's not their words, they can't be convicted. They just can't be convicted unless they're a really good liar, okay? So if you say, well, I'm thinking your student might enjoy this benefit and this feeling and maybe this solution, but what are your thoughts? What do you think she needs? They'll latch on to some of that, but they'll own it. Okay, and then like I said, 10 minutes of super focus is really all it takes to have them practice it. How many times could they present a program in 10 minutes? Program presents like 30 seconds, 45 seconds, right? They'd get 10 to 15 practices in a 10-minute period of time. How much better would they be after those 10 minutes than if you just, hey, you got your program? You ready? You good? You feel good about that? Great, see you later. I mean, what's the difference, right? Right, makes sense? Yes? Okay. Pardon me? Yes. Why do you think we're tricking people? Why do you think we're tricking people? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I wouldn't get that question, and I didn't know until he did the second one. I always explain to my staff that we do step selling. Okay, that's why you have a 4-lesson procedure. They have to buy and digest what happens on lesson 1, so they're ready for lesson 2, 3, and 4. Okay? What do they buy on the first lesson? They buy the studio. Typically in a front department, in my system, on the second lesson, they're buying the time commitment. On the third lesson, they're buying the quote. And on the fourth lesson, they're making the decision, right? So it's a step selling method. And the reason we need to step sell is because human beings are really interesting. Like, first off, I don't believe any human being comes to an Arthur Murray studio unless they have some kind of a problem, some form of a hole in their life. And this happens to every single one of us as human beings. We get a little depressed, a little unhappy, a little whatever, and what do? We seek something out. Some of us seek out Tinder. Some of us will go to a different kind of a dating site. Some of us will go to Jenny Craig. Some of us will go to a gym. And not necessarily because we sat there and said, I should go and do this because I feel this. We simply know we feel something and we take some kind of action, or we stay home and we're depressed. One of those two things happens. So I get my staff to really believe that and understand that. So when your student comes in the door, most times they only know they have a need. They don't know what the need is. Okay? So if you as a teacher understand that part of your job is to educate them on all the fantastic things the studio has to offer, then they can make an intelligent choice as to whether or not it's good for them. For instance, your student has no idea they're going to burn 300 calories at an hour party. But if you tell them that, they will think about their own life and they will make an intelligent decision as to whether or not they need it. Okay? Now, to make it easier on you, there's a system of language that you can follow that will be easy for you and easy for the student to understand. And because I've gone through that, there's no question of manipulation, because we're really talking about honest issues that the teachers face, just like the students face. There's no difference in my opinion. So that's how I would overcome that. Okay, yes. Buying the amount of time. It's going to take 3 months, 6 months, 12 years, whatever it might be. Third lesson, they buy the quote. And then the fourth lesson, they make their decision. I mean, I don't think any studio gives time and money at the same time. That is so hard to digest. Not only am I going to give you a year of my time, it's going to cost me $5,000. That's a lot to digest. If I first digest that if I give a year of my time, I'll gain all of these things, okay, I'm okay with that. Next lesson I hear about the potential tuition. Well, I'm not freaking out about two things at the same time. I'm already over the time. Now I'm going to worry about the money. And I just believe that that's what we do. We step sell. If we don't do that, how come when they come in for a sample lesson, we just don't tell them it's going to cost 15 grand? Because it is 10, 12, 8. I mean, it is. Why don't we tell them that on a sample lesson? We can't, right? So I think we're running out of time, but I want to leave you with some cool ways to train this. 5 minutes, thank you. Or cool things I think, right, in terms of training. So first off, I mentioned those emotions. Just Google popular emotions. They'll give you lists, 10 of them, 11, 12, 13. But I took that list and I found really cool pieces of music that feel like that emotion. Does that make sense? So let's say the emotion of self-confidence, right? My daughter helps me with this. There's some song that goes, me, 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 me. It's all about me. Everything me, 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 me. And it has this really joyous sound. So I got the staff in a circle. I played the song. And I said, what benefit, what feeling are you hearing in this music? And you know, none of them got the me, me, me. They thought it was fun. And it was really kind of interesting. But it got them talking about all kinds of different benefits, and they felt the music, so they were engaged. And then I had each of them mock a place inside the lesson that they would create that feeling to create the necessary desire. Make sense? Okay, second one we love to do, and I think this is because we have so many Russians, we like charades. So we'll put in a bucket all the different benefits, and we'll have them act out the benefit as a form of a charades game, which again simply gets them engaged in the thought of the emotion, the display of the emotion, and then there's a conversation of how to actually implement that into all the aspects of what we do, okay? Another one that I really like to do is taking the pictures of people in magazines or on Facebook, wherever it might be, and really just kind of profiling. So we've got this picture. What do you think are the emotions this person is experiencing in their life currently, both positive and negative? And then we'll twist that into what do you think the emotions are, what emotions do you think they're after, or what emotions do you think would be best for us to share with them? Does that make sense? And then we'll do the feature benefit feeling off of that same picture. So let's say you're right. Let's say that person is lacking romance, okay? Using the feature benefits, and the feeling, and keeping in mind the age and what we've kind of agreed on with this person, how would you teach a foxtrot step? How would you ask for frequency? How would you get them to come in for a group class? How would you get them to come in for a party? All of those same features over and over and over again. Good? And then I had one more. Oh, two more I'll give you. And I don't think I said this, but if I did, forgive me. Ingredients. Making a list of all of the features in the studio, making a list of all of the benefits, and then creating scenarios of those emotions and those feelings. Right? I made a scenario earlier. Communication between the couple, being able to communicate without talking, that would be a scenario. And put them in 3 different hats, and they pick one feature, they pick one benefit, and they pick one of the feelings, and they don't always match, which also makes it kind of fun and creative. But once they pick their 3 ingredients, then they do the mock based on the ingredients in their hand. Okay? And then the last one, I will make up a lot of fictitious people with fictitious problems and experiences. And I will just, fan them out, and each teacher picks one. And all of my assignments for that day, and again, it's typically the same, the private, the group, the party, blah, blah, blah. They all have to do the same thing with the fictitious person or couple that they pulled out of the hat. Okay? So I guess if you train it all the time, you're going to find that the language is rampant in your studio, which means we sell less and we communicate positive and negative emotions more. When we attach those emotions to what we're doing in terms of dance and accomplishments, we create a desire for them to want to go forward without having to be heavy with the procedure, so to speak. Okay? And then keep it fun, keep it interesting, and you'll be able to do the same boring thing forever. Okay? Thank you very much. Yes. Okay. Yeah, exchange lessons. I didn't say that because we all do it, but exchange lessons would be one of my top features.